So you can see from the graphic that we're working on the 305 project that was used in the keynote. The rendering you see was done in Twinmotion, which we'll get to at the end of the session. First of all, what we'll do is use BricsCAD to process a large point cloud and build a thin surface for the basis of our design. Then we will do the car park, roads, drainage and earthworks using an application called Civil Site Design. After this, we will do some swept path analysis on that area on the bottom left where the access road and the truck is. For that, we'll use AutoPath from CGS. And then we'll do some landscaping using QScape from KTF. And at the end, we will link to Twinmotion just to show how easy it is to make extremely interactive visualizations. So it's a great data set. And it brings out all the functionality. The first thing we're going to do is work on these point clouds. So the image on the left shows the original point cloud, which has over 400 million points in it. So it's obviously not realistic to build a thin surface from that. The image on the right shows the result of filtering that point cloud on V22 BricsCAD, and it gets reduced to just over 500,000. So it's an amazingly powerful optimization to have in a CAD platform. So let's just start off by showing how that works. So what we have here is the point cloud, and we can do all the usual things with that, which I won't do in this session, other than to point out that I can use the quad to go and change things like the color. So I'll switch it to intensity and select shadows. So even though it is a huge number of points, I can still spin it around interactively. If I zoom in far enough, you can see that it is made up of a whole bunch of obviously individual points. I'll quickly switch it back to the original elevation by spectrum. And what we'll do now is go to the civil menu and click on create thin surface. And the first thing you notice here is that there's an option to create from point cloud. So when I do this, I select this point cloud, and the software will then go and process those points and give us options to do the filterings. So after it's cached the points, we select the option to yes, simplify the surface. We will specify a 10 meter radius and an elevation difference of 0.01 meters. So the software will now weed out points based off that selection set of the 10 meter horizontal distance and the elevation difference of 0.01 meters. So we are then presented with the results, and we can see that the surface has been filtered down to 550,000 points. We have the option to run the simplification process again or work with this thin surface. So we're happy with this thin surface, we'll create it. What we now get is a proper thin surface in our model space. So let's go and erase some of these long triangles from this thin surface. We could go and pay some attention and remove all these if it was necessary. From our point of view, the area that we're working in is up here by the lake. So what I'll do is just quickly turn this point cloud off. So now we can see our tin model by itself. If I select this, I can go to my properties and make a whole bunch of changes. So I will turn my triangles off and turn my elevation analysis on. So what this will do is create new triangles that are color coded by elevation. So we can change this configuration as well. So as well as displaying as triangles, we can show this as contours. So what it will now do is color code the contours for us based off the same elevation range. So we can clearly see here the different colors to show us where these elevations are at. And what I could do also is turn off my original contours so I don't have overlap. And we can then go and do something like create the water drop. So if we select this surface object, as we move the mouse around, we can clearly see which way the topology is flowing. So what we're going to do is create our car park site in this area where the mouse is now and have the building in front of this lake. So if I turn my layers on, you can see that we've already drawn up this system here where we've got the general car park layout and the building footprint shown. So what we'll now do is switch into civil site design and start working on that. Before we do it, let's just explain a little bit about how this is going to work. So there's quite a bit to get through, and it helps to know the naming conventions. So the dotted red line is the main road, which runs between the building and the car park. The dashed yellow line is the outer circuit. So both of these alignments are named as main road and outer circuit, so it's very obvious which one is which. And those two effectively frame the car park area. The green line is the access road, and the second green line is the knuckle that we're going to use for the vehicle turning of the trucks in that area. The dashed white line on the right hand side is the existing road, so we want to widen that and have our main road merge into it. And the dashed blue line just on the left hand side is where we're going to do a widening for the bus bay. So there's quite a bit to get done, and everything that's done here is done with templates which we've created already. So as we build the islands in the middle of this, which is the main car park area, it isn't just the top surface, we're also modelling the boxing, so we have quantities of curb to be calculated as well. We have made templates as well, and they've been named as main road and access road, etc. So they are very obvious which one links to which road. There are other ways of doing this where you would use less templates and just do on-the-fly variations, but using this method, it makes it very, very easy to follow. So last point before we start is that everything here is based off the drainage of the car park. So the system we've employed for this is that we've done a tilted plane grading object, and the crest of that plane is the solid white line, and it flows where the arrows are going. So the drainage will go to both ends of the car park based off that, and then we can then put in a whole series of pipes to capture this. So as we're designing our main road and our outer circuit road, we will reference that grading plane and make sure that they tie in with that object. Okay, so here is BricsCAD with civil site design loaded. So we're still working in DWG, we just have the extra application sitting on top in our development platform. So you can see the ribbon tabs. We've got grading, surfaces, we have CSD AI, which we'll use later on, roads, pipes, etc. So you could drive the entire thing from the ribbon. Most of what we'll do today though, we'll use the CSD customized quad. On the most recent version, the CSD guys have used the quad quite extensively. So if I hover over different objects, so for example this is my imported surface, if I hover over that I get the options to turn the contours off. If I was to draw a polygon, I can go and hover over that and create alignment entities. I'll call this delete, press OK. I can also go and delete that for myself afterwards. So you can see that the quad is doing exactly what you'd expect and prompting you to work through your design process. So the best way to explain how it works is to get into our design, and we've got lots to do. So we've got a polygon running down through our car park, which we'll use for the concept of our grading object. We have also got some templates created, which we mentioned earlier. So one of these templates that we've got is a grading car park. So that goes 80 meters left and 80 meters right at a slope of -3. So when you do grading objects, they can have multiple facets to them, which we'll explain in a second. So when I hover over that polygon, I get the option to create grading object. I will call this grading car park. And the template I'll use is the one I mentioned just a while ago, grading CP. I'll reference that surface and I'll pick an elevation based off that point to begin with and press create. So this goes and builds a very, very simple flat grading object for us. You can see the contours here. At this stage you can go and do a water drop just to prove that everything is sloping in the right direction. What you really want to do is click on vertical grading editor. So this allows you to go and graphically add intersection points and design a proper centerline design for this object. Now normally you'd have multiple monitors. You can see already that doing this on one monitor gets quite busy on the screen. So I'm going to press Control-0, which is the benefit of being able to use the quad to do everything. And I will go and start making changes to this. So I will move this intersection point down around here somewhere. Move this one down as well. And I will create a new intersection point up here. I will give this a VC length of say 60 meters. And as I do this, you can see my contours updating. Also, if I zoom in and hover over that water drop line, I get the option to refresh that. So you can see that it adjusts to the new contours. So as you make more changes, you can just verify that everything is doing what it should, and also you can illustrate to others that you've done the thing correctly. So I want my apex to be roughly over the central island. So you can see on plan view, as I move this around, I get a marker so I can position it correctly. So this will probably be a good enough start for us here. Again, I could go and refresh my polygon here. I'll go and erase that because we don't need it. I'll also turn these contours off because we don't need to see them just now. And we can then start working on our main road. So I won't close this dialog box just yet. I will just place it down here out of the way for a while. And we mentioned earlier that the main road, which is this one here, that needs to reference that grading object. So when we hover over this alignment, we get a bunch of options, including create road string. So we'll create the road string. In this, we got to pick a template. The template that we'll pick will be 305 main road. The surface and the spacings, the default values are okay for all these. You can see you get prompts and graphical illustrations for each of these. And later on, we'll talk more about this vertical curve for side roads. But for the time being, this is good enough. And what we get here is a similar dialog box to the grading object. It does the strings for us. If I right click anywhere, I can see a cross section at that point. And as I hover the mouse across the cross section, you can see a helper marker which shows where you are in plan view. The same occurs along the vertical profile. So you can very easily work your way around the system and get everything set up. The software by default puts in a design for you, which you can either discard or adjust and reuse and move around. In my case, we'll leave it as it is for the time being. What I want to do is show as a reference surface my grading object. So to do this, I go to Design Constraints, I will click on Show Surface, and I will call this Grading. Press OK. I want to base this off my main road, and I'll keep the color as magenta. I now see that magenta line, which shows me my reference object for my grading surface. So using the marker on plan view, I can see that at this chainage range, it doesn't matter too much because the road is off the car park. But as we get to around here, we need to make sure these match. Now, you can snap here and make them absolutely in the same place. I'll just do it graphically. And when we get to the opposite end, we have the exact same situation where we get to a certain area where we don't need to marry in to the grading object, but for most of it we do. Now, in this area there's quite a substantial difference, so you could go and just move your road design to match, or what you could do is go back into your other vertical window for your grading object and make some changes here. So we'll go and bring this down by a certain amount, and after we've done that, we go to this window and click on refresh, and you'll see the magenta line updates. So you can see that you can interactively move these around. Now, we're not going to spend too much time on it here, but you can see how you would very easily go and work through a scenario and mix and match the two designs, push them around until the whole thing works, because it's never going to be a simple process, so you have the flexibility to get interactions on both sides. So given that we got so much to do in a short time, I'm going to leave my initial vertical design of my main road with this much. I will close both of these windows. We can always go and change it afterwards and have everything update. What we'll now do is go and look at our access road. So this blends into our main road. So when I hover over this, I'll do the same process. I'll create a road string. This time I'll pick a different template. I've got one created called access road. and I accept all my defaults again. I'm happy with all those. And this goes, and you can see it creates this ease curve for me. So if I push this window across to one side, you can see that as I move along the alignment, when it gets to the center line of that main road, it does an ease transition curve to come in. So if I was to go and change that main road, this would adjust to match. So we will leave that with defaults to begin with, and what we'll do is go and focus on this knuckle. So we've already drawn the alignment for this, so if I edit that alignment, you can see it's been created. We could go and make changes to all this, but for the time being, we'll rely on the fact that we used the BricsCAD polygon using various tangent snaps to create this. To go and add the knuckle onto that road, use the quad, and you will see an option here saying create knuckle. It asks you if you want to edit a new one or enter edit an existing one or press enter to build a new one. When you do this, you give it a name. So I call this access road knuckle. The adjacent road is access road. Code is EB. You can see here you got options for typing in values. So if you wanted to, you could type in the various parameters for radius, and you got different options for offsets and different things. I usually find it easier just to draw it and pick the alignment. So I'll select that alignment we've got here, which is called, I forgot what we've called it, knuckle access road. Here we go. If I click on create alignment, I then go and pick the template I want to use. So I've got one set up here, and you've got various options for doing different things with the drainage. So if you look at the graphic on the top right of the dialog box, you can see how the slope can be reversed to create a channel or to keep it flat. So we'll keep it flat, and we'll press create string, and you can see what it's done is extended the crossfall of that road out to match the knuckle area. So there's a lot more we can do with this, but for a basic quick prelim, what we've now got is the main road more or less matching onto our grading object, and our side road knuckle coming in to the main road. You can see here that the two roads just butt together, so if I go and turn on triangles, they haven't been resolved yet. So let's just turn those triangles back off quickly. When I use the quad here by right clicking, I got an option for creating curve returns. So if I click on here, I get an option to do many different versions of complex compound curve returns. I'll do a very simple one. I'll give it a radius of say 4 meters. I'll press create, and you can see that's gone away and built that curve return for me. I'll do one here. I'll give it a slightly larger radius. I'll give it say 7 meters, and I've now got these set up. So when I turn on my triangles now, you can see how the two roads have been blended. The curve returns have been resolved and everything else. We could do a lot more with that. The curve returns are super interactive, but at this stage I want to just get through the overall design first. The next thing that we would do is start doing variations on these roads. So if we go up here, we can see we've got a bus bay in this area. If I just turn on line weight here, we can see it more clearly. So that thick red line is our bus bay area. So if I hover over here, I can show the cross section of that road at that chainage, and I can see that the way we've set up this cross section is we've got the footpath on the right hand side. On the left is just a simple curb and gutter. So what I want to do is widen the road at that chainage to meet the alignment of the bus bay. So let me just change my display here quickly. I will show codes and turn off depth. So I can see here my code is my REB for my right edge bitumen. I can right click here on the cross section window, click on add variation. I will click on modify section, and I got options where I can type in numbers to change the width, or I can just say match code to alignment, and the alignment I want to match to is the bus bay. So press apply, and what happens now is you can see the road has been pushed out to match that slope. You can see on the cross section it's been widened out, so we've maintained the existing crossfall. We've got options for doing more complex versions of this too, where you do different types of crossfall, but for the time being, if I turn my triangles back on here, you can see that the road has been widened to accommodate the bus stop here. So that's good, we're making some progress here. We've got our main road done in a prelim sense, and we've got our access road with the knuckle. What we now need to do is work out what we're going to do with these islands. So the curb and gutter we've got here on the edge of our road, they currently overlap with the islands. And what we're actually going to do is put the curb and gutter on the islands. So I want to remove them from this existing design. So let me quickly turn my triangles off here so I can explain this. I'll bring up my cross section again here. So in this case, what I want to do is a different variation where I want to erase my curb and gutter for a large chainage range. So to do that, again, I will right click, I will select add variation. Instead of modify, I will go to delete, and I will say delete everything behind that code. And I want to go from chainage 75 to chainage 325. I could do this graphically, I could select these from the screen, but I know what my values are here. When I press apply, you will see that these have been removed from here, and that curb and gutter has now been taken out. I could also go and remove my LEB here, so I'll actually remove my road edge, so we'll do everything from the islands. So again, I'll go delete section. Instead of going sections behind code, this time I'll go delete section completely. I'll use the same chainage ranges, so I'll go from 75 to 325. Press apply. So now if I turn back on my triangles, I can see exactly what's happening here. You can see how we have removed half of our road from chainage 75 up as far as chainage 325. So we could use a lot less templates and just do variations to maneuver the template into different scenarios. And you can also use strings to stretch it and have it behave in certain ways. So depending on what your preference is for those, you can work your way around them. What we'll do at this stage is work on our loop road. And for the loop road, we're going to do the same thing. We will design it on the left hand side and leave the right hand side blank. So we will take the right. We'll do that with the traffic islands. So again, I hover over this and I click on create road. This time I've got a template called outer circuit, and I click on my exact same parameters as previous. I'm happy with my defaults. When I press OK, that will go and do up a design for us as we had previously. If I look at my cross section here, you can see that it has been set up so that it's got the left hand side only. It's got nothing on the right hand side. So it just saves us the hassle of having to go and delete all those codes like we did in the previous one. Now, what we have to bear in mind here is that the green line we're seeing here is the point cloud surface. It's not our grading object. So at the moment, this design is put in by default. It's not referencing our grading object. So we can do the exact same thing that we had previously. We can go to design constraints, we can add a surface. We call this grading again. And this time we will click on the outer loop road and press apply. So we can see our purple reference plane again. And we could do the same thing we did a while ago, where we could go and click these IPs and move them to match. Or we could go and say delete all those IPs and we'll do a new design. So you click on auto profile and you tell the software, I want you to look at that surface called grading, which is the one we made earlier. So we could get it to drape IPs at each point, or we could say go and do design. So we tell it use these values for curve length, for cut and fill factors, and for level adjustment. You press OK, you press calculate, and what it does here is it fits a design over that reference plane for us. So we can then go and adjust that as we need. We can click on any of these and move the IPs around. It tends to do a pretty good job for a first pass. From the point of view of the short time frame we got here, we will accept that as being good enough. You will obviously go and verify it and make all kinds of checks. What we've now got is a basic setup where we have got our main road done and our loop road. So all we have to do is tie these together. So we would do the same process we had earlier where we built the curb returns. In this case, I'm going to do a slight variation on that. instead of doing individual curb returns, I'm going to click on automatic curb returns. So when I click on this, it asks for a radius. I'll give it 3.5. Press OK. And you can see how it builds that curb return for me here. It's put some triangles crossing over here, which they'll get fixed up when we design this island. If we go to the opposite end, exact same thing. So we can turn these off quickly so we can see what we're doing more easily. So we've made some progress here. We've got the basics set up. Now what we need to do is go and blend this road here onto our existing road. Now this is a reasonably frequent process, so I want to just make sure everyone understands how we're doing it. So let me just go and switch back to the PowerPoint very quickly. So this is a view from Twinmotion of that area, and you can see that the widening has been done already. So to explain what we're doing with this, we've got a alignment here for a center line of that road, of the existing road I mean, and we've got an alignment for the saw cut, which is where that current road will end. Then we're going to do a new design for that red area, which is the extension, the widening. So to explain what we're doing here, on the cross section, we will take the crossfall between the center line and the saw cut at each chainage. So at this chainage, it is 0.49%, and that will be extended out to match. So what makes this really powerful is that the AI component of the CSD package on BricsCAD, it will try to guess what you want to do and automate it for you. So all we have to do is name each of these alignments. So we've named this one centerline, this one saw cut, and this one widening. So if I go to the AI tab and click on Project Assist, or I can use the quad and go to Project Assist from here, it finds these strings and it tries to guess what each one is for. Now in my case it's very obvious because I put in very, very clear names. As you put in different names, it will learn as you correct and effectively adopt your terminologies. So the widening is the road edge connection. Saw cut is obviously a saw cut control, so that one's easy. And the center line is a center line road string. So when I press confirm, it looks at all these and gives me options. On the center line, it gives me an option to take this is a road widening project. So once that's done, it knows what to do with the other two strings. I'll tell it which template to use. I've actually got one created here for the existing road widening. We'll just model the left hand side only. And it will do curb returns coming into this as well, so I'll give these a radius of, we'll say, 7 meters. So when I press compute, it goes and does all this work for us. And if I now go and, sorry, before I do that, it also produces a report. So the report tells you each step that's been done, if you want to see exactly how it's been put together. It also gives you the option of watching a video of each of those steps. So the video is showing on my other screen here. So turn that video off. So the what you would do to confirm that it's worked is look at the cross section, and on the cross section you can see here, if I zoom in a bit, you can see it has that 0.49%, which is perfect. If I use the middle mouse button to scroll forwards, you can see everywhere that it reads the existing crossfall, it has extended that out to meet the alignment. So it's done exactly what I wanted to create that existing road scenario. And if I look at my triangulation here, it's matched all those in. The last thing I could do if I wanted is go back to my cross-section view here, and if I wanted to remove, for example, the footpath from that other side of the road, I can go to delete section and delete that LFPI, and I can click on current change to alignment end. I can do it for the outside of the footpath as well. So delete section and click on current change to alignment end. So if I turn off my triangles again so we can see what's been done here, the footpath has now been taken out of the opposite side of that road. So that takes care of that existing road modeling. So now what we want to do is go and finish off the car park. So we've got all the surrounding roads done to a good enough extent. It's time to go and build these islands. So If I select one of these polygons, I get the option to create a grading string, and I will call this one island 01. And the template I'll use for this will be curve island. So we've just done a template where it creates the boxing below the curve as well, so we can do some quantities. The target surface in this case, let's use the grading surface because we're going to drape it onto that surface, and we will accept a default value here. We click on create update, and it goes and it builds that for us initially. When I look at the vertical grading editor, you can see that it's just done a horizontal line along that surface. So we can do the same thing that we did earlier, where we click on auto profile, and on auto profile we click on reference surface, click on that grading option. Now this time I won't use fitting. So when I use the fitting option, it will go and create a whole bunch of design profiles. If I leave that off and press OK and press calculate, all it will do is drape that onto the existing one. And I must have pressed the incorrect. GR grading. Press OK, calculate, and it does this for us. You press close. So that will go and build that surface for us. Now you might go and redesign it to make it more smooth at the apex of the curve, but for the time being that will do for a starting point. The benefit here is that we can go and run through these quite quickly. So we call this one island 02. Pick the same template, which was the curve island, and this time I'll do it slightly differently. When I press create update, I won't go to the vertical grading editor. I'll just look at the IPs in here on the grid view and click on take levels from surface. When I do this, it produces the exact same result. So it means that I can run through these quite quickly. So we'll repeat this process for the rest of the islands. We just speed up the video slightly so we don't take up too much time. And you'll see that we just run through the same steps and create a whole bunch of grading objects draped onto that surface. Now that that's been done, we can go and see all these individual surfaces, and what we have to work out now is how to join them all together. So we've got a set of triangulation called the automatic model, or the auto model, for all the roads. So let me just turn that off. And you've got individual grading objects for each island, because the auto model doesn't normally include grading objects. So what I want to do is build a combined model with all of those in it, and then use that to export into Twinmotion ultimately after we've done the rest of our checks. So what I'll do first of all is I'll just right click out here and bring up my toggle display, and I'll turn all these surfaces off because there's so many on the screen it's hard to keep track of which one is which. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is click on this model creation option on the roads tab. So you've got auto model over here, which will do what you want most of the time. Because our scenario is slightly unusual, we will do it manually. So we'll click on model creation. In here you could do all kinds of clever things to stitch up models in different ways. What we're going to do is create a model that's linked to the automatic model, and we'll call this car park prelim. So what we're going to do is say take the automatic model, and I'll click on the include exclude tab here, and I will say I want to add my islands 1, 2, 3, and you can see that as I select these they are highlighting on my model space. So I'll just add all these individual islands to my new surface. So what I've now done is told the software to go and effectively build a combination surface. So if I close this and save it, I can now go, and when I look at the triangulation of this, for example, if I turn triangulation on, you can see that it is taking the islands and the roads and everything all as one surface. It's got a few long triangles here from where it's crossing over, so what I could do is go into my surface manager here, and if I go to my editing option, I can say delete some edges. So I can delete these edges here. That's where the building footprint will eventually go. I can delete these edges. And let's see, I can delete these as well. Okay, what I can now do is turn off the triangles here again, and I've now got a combined surface model. So to see how this looks and to have all the materials applied, there's a process for doing that in one click. So if I hover over that surface object, I'll see an option here called Open Model Viewer. When I select this, I get a separate window which is going to show a graphic of all these areas. So I simply tell it that the model I want to work off is my car park prelim that I've just created. Press OK, and that will bring up a graphics window which shows all of these objects. So okay, I need to fix up my curb return at this area, which I'll do in a second. You can see how it's combined all these for me. So the surface has been graded. From the point of view of Twinmotion, the materials have been added as well. So we will replace these materials with better materials in Twinmotion. But the important thing is that the individual triangles have been trimmed and all of these objects have been added. So I can go and fix up these in a second and fix up this curb return. But at this stage, I've done most of the work I need to do. So I'll put this window across to one side and just show a few more things that we can do just to finalize this. One of them is to do with line markings. So let me just turn off these contours. So we've got some layers here. So if I turn on line marking dashed and line marking solid, I've got some polylines drawn from where I want different line types to appear for my line markings, and I also have my my car park layouts added here. So if I go back into this window, if I go to my line marking tab, if I click on marking setup, I can do it by alignment or by layer. A layer is usually faster. So I will go here and scroll down as far as line marking. So if I go for line marking dashed, and I'll tell it to use the surface prelim, and that the default one is a dashed line type. I'll add a second one, which will be line marking solid. So for this one, we'll click on the line marking style called continuous, 100 mil wide. And the last thing we'll do is we'll add the line marking of the car parks, so the car park layouts, sorry, the car park spaces. And I'll make that one continuous as well, and for both of these I'll click on the correct surface. So I'll click on my prelim combination surface, and when I press OK, it will go and add all those line markings onto the surface for me. So when I export to Twinmotion eventually, those will all be created. So in a very quick time, we've managed to build up the basic design and not just do the design but also do the visualization side of it. And we can keep this window open in the background and have it update as we do more changes. So at this stage, let me hide this window and we'll go back to the PowerPoint. So all the partner apps that we're using for this presentation can be accessed through the BricsCAD App Store. And the next one that we want to look at is AutoPath by CGS Labs. So when we search for this, we get the following screen, and in here we can see a quick summary with some reference links and also a download option. So let's bring up AutoPath, and we'll see the AutoPath ribbon here in the BricsCAD drawing environment. And the first thing we'll do is just look at some of the libraries. So you obviously have your standard vehicle types, and what you find is that as well as being generally intuitive and customizable, there's also a very extensive library in AutoPath of many different vehicle types. So this includes special libraries where you got things like agricultural machinery, we've even got aircraft, and we've also got things like cranes. So you can get into very specific details of doing customizations, even starting from scratch. Usually we find that the standard vehicle types tend to cater for most jobs. So what I often end up doing is going back to the AASHTO libraries, for example. And in our case, we want to work with a single unit truck, which we select. Then the quickest way to get started in using the software is to select the option for Easy Drive, and this will pick my current vehicle by default. I could obviously change that as well if I wanted. And what we want to do now is drive this truck into the access road and then make sure we can turn and get back out. So we can use the mouse to click on key points and create the path, and as we do it we will see the turning circles in front of us, so we get an idea of the options that we've got available. We can drive in here, select reverse and go back into the knuckle area and then go forward again to get an interactive kind of a take on exactly how we're doing. So having done this, first thing is that I can pick that path and use the grips to change any of those orientations and see the effect. And in this case we can see we've encroached on the curb, so we can go and edit some points to see if we can improve that. But I think it's going to need some redesign work. So let's first of all click on Easy Drive and do a continuation of the path. So we will go and see how we get back onto the main road, and in this case you could possibly swing out wider and try to miss the curb, but by then you'd be in the middle of the main road, so we definitely have got a problem. So there's a few things we can do with this. First one we'll do is we will build a report. So let's click on the steering angle report option, and we click on the path, and then we place this report off to one side. And what this shows is the max turning angles for left and right, as well as the radius used for the path. What we can also do is go back and edit the geometry. So let's bring up the CSD curb return option and change the radius from 5 to 12. And when we press OK here, we'll see that when the adjusted radius is used, we just miss the vehicle turning. So it's still quite tight, but at least we're not encroaching. So other things we can do here, we can animate the path, and when you do this, you select the path and you can drag the slider along the timeline and just illustrate the dynamics of navigating around this area. We can also do things like turning on the draw trace option if we need to emphasize a specific area. And what we find is that it's often the case that we need to use the animations to help kind of communicate the pros and cons of different scenarios. So you will often be pretty aware of the answer before you start. This can be a communication tool as well as an interrogation tool. So it's a very, very intuitive system to use. You can literally install AutoPath, pick the vehicle from the library and run Easy Drive, and you're on your way. In the case of this project, we've proved what we need to prove, where we've verified the simple access road in a very, very short time. There's a bunch more features within AutoPath, so I'd encourage you to go to the CGS Labs website and look at those details. One last point to emphasize is that it's not just that the software is intuitive, which it obviously is, it's also the extensive research on all the algorithms behind the calculations. So this means you've got confidence in the design you're producing. So the next challenge we're going to do is landscaping. So let's go back to the PowerPoint and introduce QScape. So this is another partner application in the App Store, and obviously it sits on BricsCAD, and it provides tools and data libraries for landscaping and planting. So it's got a whole bunch of very flexible configuration options, and it also produces high quality proposals and plans, which we can show in this very, very quick demo. So this drawing is a landscape version of the project from QScape, and the important thing to note when you look at it is that as well as providing the user interface within BricsCAD for inserting and labeling these trees and plants, there's also a process to create schedules on the measurement interface. These can be imported into Excel or put into BricsCAD for documentation purposes. And this ties in very well with the general documentation that we're going to use from civil site design, AutoPath, and just the general design area. So we didn't have time to go into the drainage design side of civil site design, but here's one of the standard outputs. We can also look at the plan and profile view from the main road design strings. And here we have the AutoPath information incorporated into the documentation of the access road. So since everything is in BricsCAD in the same environment, it's very easy to blend it all together. But the main output that we're going to do is going to be on Twinmotion. So let's go back into Civil Site Design and look at the model viewer. So this version has had a bit more work done. You can see the pipes have been included and they're visible through the surface. There's also a lake in the background. We won't get too much into the details at this stage. What we're really interested in looking at is the output tabs and the export options. So in here we'll see we've got a bunch of export file formats. From OBJ, we got 3D PDFs, and also we can make a DWG texture triangulation file, which we will show quickly here. So we'll actually use the OBJ file to import into Twinmotion, but the benefit of looking at the DWG file is that you can do things like match properties and make corrections to any blemishes on the triangulation. So let's open Twinmotion, and we'll see here that the OBJ file has been imported already in this session. So what we'll do is, first of all, notice that all the geometries come across with the materials that have been assigned in Civil Site Design, including the line marking and everything else. And the real benefit here is that because the triangulation has already been set by material, if I go into my Twinmotion materials and if I search for lake, for example, I can go and grab a lake texture and drag it over this blue area. So straight away we can see that it's been replaced by an animated water texture. So it doesn't get much easier in terms of replacing materials. We can do some more versions of these. So let's just go and navigate down towards this grass. And the grass that comes out of Civil Site Design isn't great. So let's go into materials and go to ground. We'll select nature and click on one of these options from Twinmotion. So it's a better version of the grass. I can do things like adjust the scale here, and I can go and, for example, change the grunge factor so it's got more inconsistencies, or even make it darker if I need. So I don't want to do too much perfectionism on this version. We'll jump to a more complete version of the file in a second. Really what I want to just do is show some of the basics. So if I click on the material picker, I can also edit the materials that come in. So this footpath, for example, it's quite a good material, but let's say we're worried that it's a bit too bright. We can drag the luminosity down and make it significantly darker. So we have the options to edit as well as replace. So that gives us a whole range of options for going and completing this file. Let me just do one more thing where I will select this grass purge, and you will see on the scene graph on the right hand side that gets highlighted. So I can now right click that and select isolate. So the fact that we've got these things again controlled by material means that we can remove, or we can isolate certain areas. And what I want to do here is go to vegetation paint. So you would often paint trees and different types of shrubs in here. What we'll do instead is go to grass, click on a lawn type here, and I'll give this a very high density. And when I go to my brush option, I'll set my diameter to 1 meter. And now what I can do is paint grass onto this verge. So what I now have is detailed grass objects as well as a texture in this area. But because I was able to isolate, I didn't need to go and worry about painting in the wrong areas. So now if I was to go and zoom in here, you will see that the grass is actually capturing shadows and fitting in very nice and tidy to our area. So if you were doing a close-up on this bus stop section, what you could do is go back up to the panel here, select characters, and we'll go to groups, and here we have a group of people that are actually queuing up like they're waiting for a bus. So we can insert these guys here and then rotate them so they're in the correct direction. So let's just select this and use the rotate option. I'm not going to make it too perfect here, but that's good enough what I need. And the last thing we would do here is go to vehicles, click on buses and pick some kind of a bus and place that over here somewhere. So if I pick this again and rotate that. So what we're doing here is building up the scene, and depending on which areas are of interest, we could do things like put this grass in so that we can appreciate the details. If not, we wouldn't need to worry about it. Rather than spend too much time going through all this in this file, let me just switch here to a more complete version. So you'll see here that it's the same geometry, but the textures have been applied, and we've added things like trees and characters and vehicles. You'll also see that we've got the same bus stop area, only we've added the bus stand, which was done in Grasshopper in a separate breakout session on this summit. And we've also saved some views. So when we go to these views, we can see the access road that we designed earlier. In here, the pipes have been turned on, and they've been set to X-ray mode, so they can be visible through the road surface. In this case, it's the drainage pipes. We could also add sewer and other services. As well as that view, we also have the view that we use for the PowerPoint for the road widening, which we can look at here. And then we have the overall perspective view as well that we use for the general overview. So it's clear that when you use the twin motion functionality, it's very quick to build up these scenes, and it's a very, very simple process. Once the triangulation has been automatically split by material in BricsCAD and Civil Site Design, it sets it up so it's really just a question of applying materials to get a very impressive looking output. And this is going to be enhanced further as the process gets more evolved, so it'll be even more automated with tables and automations. So one last thing we'll do here is just go back to that bus stop area, and we'll do a very quick video just to show how easy it is. So all we have to do here is go to the videos tab. We'll navigate to the first perspective and click on create video. Then we will go to a second view and click on the plus icon to add that keyframe in. And once that's been done, we can press the play button and our video is ready to go. So doing visualizations used to be reserved for large scale projects with huge budgets. You can see how easy it is here and how automated it can be, so they can be applied to much smaller and more practical projects as well. And this is really the whole summary of the entire presentation from this side, and it brings us to the end where, first of all, thank you for attending. It's been a very interesting data set to work with. We did have a lot to cover in a pretty short time, so I'm sure you got plenty of questions. Please leave us know. We'll be very happy to either direct you to online resources or to jump onto a Zoom chat or some kind of a conversation. We can also direct you to the right people to speak with from the various partner applications. You will find their details on the BricsCAD App Store as well. So please get involved. Please keep the interactions coming in. And thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you soon.